Trust me, business is hard. So I like to get people's minds ready so they know what they are going in for. Now, the question to ask yourself is, why do I want to become an entrepreneur? Why do I want to go into entrepreneurship? Now, I'm, I'm not one of the regular coaches that will tell you, oh, if the reason why you want to go into business is because you want to make money, then you're not going to fit in, or it's the wrong reason. It is a very, very valid reason, please. Of course, I want to make money. Of course, everybody wants to make money. So, yes, if you want to make money, if that's the reason why you want to go into entrepreneurship to make money, it's still very valid. However, now you should have a core value. That is, you should have something else aside making money as the reason that you want to go into entrepreneurship. Yes, of course, you want to make money. Everybody wants to make money. We get that. We know that. It's, in fact, it's a good drive, right? However, what other core reason do you have to be an entrepreneur? Now, if you go into business for this, and the sole reason you're going into business is to make money, that's the sole and only reason you're going into business. In fact, you don't even enjoy business. The only thing that is interesting you is the money. I'm sorry, but you might likely crash. There's a tendency that, you would start thriving, things might even start going well. You would actually make that money, but you won't build something sustainable, because trust me, no matter how good it gets in entrepreneurship, it will get bad at some point. Like I always say, you need to keep failing to win. So at some point, you will fall. At some point, you will, that funds that is, giving you that drive, that is making you happy, would not come in. So it is that other reason that you have that will be your backbone in moments like that. So imagine you don't have any other reason. If the business is not bringing you money, then you have no other reason to be in business. You could easily just close up your business. So the question I like to ask people is, if you start this business now and in 6 months you have no profits, I mean no profits, are you still willing to continue? Now, circling back to the reason or the reasons why you want to go into entrepreneurship, like I said, if money is the only drive, you might not be able to build something sustainable. Now, another reason that can be a backbone to, money is passion. Passion is a very important reason when it comes to being in entrepreneurship. If you're passionate about your product or service, you have the tendency of building something sustainable, because you are hell bent on seeing that dream come to life. You're hell bent on achieving that dream, right? So even if the funds are not coming in, that product is your baby that you still trust and you still believe in so much. Now, passion does not just stop at being passionate about your product or service, but it also extends to, being passionate about seeing people interact with your product or service. So, for example, you could be a writer and you're passionate about writing. Yes, of course, we know you're passionate about writing, but are you also passionate about seeing people read your work and, being intrigued, being excited about your work? Does that give you satisfaction as an entrepreneur or as a writer? So you might want to ask yourself these questions before you fully go into entrepreneurship, or before you leave that 9 to 5 job. Because as much as, yes, entrepreneurship comes with flexibility and that might sound enticing, it's also a very, very challenging journey that comes with a lot of tests and trials on the way. So you just want to be sure that you are getting everything right from the beginning. Now let's talk about people that um are already entrepreneurs or already business owners, and sometimes they get, the question comes in, which is normal at some point. You're seeing other people move on with their lives with 9 to 5 or whatever, and you're probably still stuck on that business mode, and you're probably not even finding its way. And so that's starts to creep in. The question starts to creep in, that are you making the right decision? Are you even in the right space? Should you dust off your CV and start searching for a job? How do you know that you are made for entrepreneurship? So the truth is that it's still all intertwined. All the things that I have mentioned before are still very relevant in this case. Are you passionate about what you're doing? If you didn't make profit, or if you were not making profit for a couple of months, would you still believe in your passion? And another thing that is very important here is vision. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? What's the end goal for your business? Do you even see the end goal of your business? Because that's another thing that should keep you going, because you see the destination, and so because you see the destination, you keep going and you stop at nothing until you get to that destination. So sometimes the problem is just that you've not built a roadmap, you've not built that vision. But I know it's already getting old school to build vision boards, but sometimes you don't even have to carry your pen and paper. Sometimes it's in your head, right? So you need to have a vision and plan towards it. So, to know if entrepreneurship is for you, the question you should be asking yourself is, what is your big dream for your business? Sit down and critically think about this. And then after you've decided, of course, you plan out how you intend to achieve that big dream. Of course, it's not going to be easy. We all know that. Now, the next question you'd ask yourself is, are you willing to go through this process to achieve this big dream? Is this big dream worth all of this process that you'll be going through, all of this, challenges? Of course, it's not always going to be hard. There are times, like I said, there are times that you would actually make money. Of course, that's why we're doing business. But in times where it gets hard, marketing is hard, advertisement is hard, sales is hard, would you still be willing to go for this big dream that you have? Will it be all worth it to you? Now, after you've answered this question, I believe that you should know by now if where you are is meant for you or not. I think it's also important to distinct where you want to be or where you currently are. Like I said, being a business owner does not equally imply being an entrepreneur. So you need to, like I mentioned, I consider business ownership level 1 and entrepreneurship level 2. So you need to decide, are you sticking to running a business, or are you going to graduate into entrepreneurship? Are you going to innovate your product? And like I keep saying, it's very okay to decide to stay at level 1. It's okay. I feel like these days, especially in Nigerian society, we've bastardized the meaning of entrepreneurship, that we've lost its value. And I usually say this thing: there are cases where the woman on your street selling bully is even more of an entrepreneur than you doing the whole social media marketing and all of that. There are cases like that. So you really need to define where you are and where you're going to. So I hope that in the course of this episode, you've been able to reflect on some things in your life, especially when it comes to business. And of course, we could keep the conversation going. I do, of course, want us to keep the conversation going. So please drop your comments and feel free to send me a voice note in my DMs, either on Instagram or WhatsApp. And, just tell me how you feel about the entire episode, what you think about it. And, you never can tell. You might just be hearing your voice on our next episode. Um, I intended for this episode to be as free as possible. In fact, you might have probably noticed that I am making this episode on my bed. So there's no microphone or anything. And I wanted it to be as vulnerable, as ordinary as possible. I just wanted it to seem like I was gisting with my girls or my boys, whatever the case may be. And I think I was able to achieve that. So, like I said, please drop your comments, your questions, and your comments. If you have any opinions about what I've said, whether they are against or for, feel free to jump into my DM or drop a comment. If you know me, I love to talk about business 100% of the time. I'm never turning down a business conversation. So yes, please, let's talk about your business. As a matter of fact, you can talk to me about your business journey, whatever it is. Feel free to, like I said, drop a voice note in my DM, and you might just be hearing your voice on our next episode. Because, like I said, like I keep saying, I want this to be as free as possible. I want it to be a conversation, however that may be. And I will be rounding up on this episode here because I need to get about my day. But I definitely did have fun talking to you guys. And um trust me, we're going to be very consistent now that I have cracked the code. I know this might not be, it might not eat the old professional code, but I mean I believe that it is passing across the message, and that's the most important thing. So expect more episodes very soon, probably before the end of the week, depending on when you are listening to this.